Well, I wonder, have you ever had like an out of body experience where you like noticeably feel something different because of the environment that you're in? Or maybe can you think back to a moment that's happened in your life that just seems like too good to be true, like indescribably cool and memorable? I remember the first time I went to a Blackhawks hockey game. Never really been much of a hockey guy, but this was kind of back in their heyday when they were winning the Stanley Cup like every other year or whatever it was. And I remember we stood up for the national anthem. And if you've ever been to a game before, you know that the tradition is for fans to stand up and cheer like crazy during the entire song. It was so loud and so powerful, like I could noticeably feel something different in that moment. Or I also remember years ago when I went to Alaska. And one of the things we did on that trip was we took a helicopter ride and we landed on a glacier and then we walked around for an hour or so. And I literally at one point drank fresh water out of a glacier. It was like one of those moments where you have to pinch yourself. Like, am I really doing this? It was just breathtaking and something that's just etched into my memory. Or maybe more spiritually speaking, have you ever had a moment where you can feel God's presence so noticeably, where you can just sense that He's close and He's present with you in a very specific, tangible way? Maybe on a retreat or a mission trip, maybe even just when you spend time in nature and marvel at God's creation. You see, moments like these are overwhelming and amazing and oftentimes are so powerful. But if you're anything like me, my guess is that you have way more moments that aren't like that. Mundane moments. Moments where you're kind of just going through the motions. Maybe moments where you don't feel like God is very close. Just your average run-of-the-mill moments in your daily life. And in the midst of that, I want to share with you about one of my favorite words in all of the Bible. And that word is Emmanuel. And it simply means God with us. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard that word used probably every December, every Advent of most of your life. We know in Matthew 1:18 it says that the Virgin, Mary, will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. You see, Jesus is our Emmanuel, and that's kind of the whole point of the Christmas story, isn't it? That God created everything and it was good, but then sin entered the world and distorted everything, and it separated us from a perfect and holy God. And so God enacted His redemptive plan to restore us back into relationship with Him, and He did so by sending His Son, by sending Jesus into our world. John chapter 1, verse 14 says, "The Word," which is referring to Jesus, "became flesh and made His dwelling among us. And we have seen His glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." Jesus came to dwell with us, to be with us, so that we could be saved from our sin by His death and resurrection. We'll talk more about that part of the story on Easter, but for tonight, in our groups, I really want us to lock in on that phrase, Emmanuel. And I want to talk about the implications of what it means that we serve a God who loves us and who is always with us. What does it really mean that God is with us? That He is with you and that He's with me? How can we really experience that? And even, how do we reconcile the fact that God is with us even when we have moments where we don't really feel like He is, right? When we feel distant or far from Him. When we can look around the world that's broken and messed up around us, is it really still true that God is with us even in the midst of that? When I feel alone or anxious or depressed or isolated, how can I really know that God is with me in every moment? Here's really what I've learned to be true in my relationship with Jesus, and that it's that He is always present. You see, sometimes I drift away. Sometimes I doubt Him. Sometimes I get wrapped up and consumed by all the other things that are going on around me, which is especially prevalent at this time of year. But I know that He is always with me, and He's with you. He's with you in the big out-of-body type moments on your spiritual mountaintop, and He's with you in the mess. He's with you in the hard stuff, in your struggles, in the midst of pain. He chose to come and dwell with you, to enter our world, not in a glamorous way, as you might expect the King of Kings to do, but He entered as a tiny, helpless little baby. Why? Because He loves you. He loves you right where you are. No matter what you're facing, no matter how you feel, He is always with you, and He wants you to know Him more. I'm excited tonight as we take some time to dive into this word, Emmanuel, God with us, and to see what God might show us through His word. I love you guys. Let me pass things now back to your D group leaders. If I don't see you before then, let me wish you a Merry Christmas.